The morning rain drummed against the windows of the Seoul Cybernetics Research Institute as Dr. Hana Kim stared at her screen in confusion. She had been working on what should have been a simple task, fixing some corrupted data in the Galactic Information Network. Instead, she found something that made no sense at all. Hana pushed her glasses up her nose and leaned closer to the monitor. The data corruption wasn't random like she expected. It followed a pattern, a very specific, very deliberate pattern that looked almost like someone had carefully removed pieces of information on purpose. "This is weird," she said to herself, taking another sip of her cold coffee. She had been working as a data archaeologist for 5 years now. Her job was to dig through old computer files and repair damaged information systems across the galaxy. Most of the time, it was boring work. Computer viruses, hardware failures, solar radiation damage, the usual suspects that destroyed digital records. But this was different. Hana opened another file and ran her analysis program. The same pattern appeared again. Large chunks of historical data were missing, but not in the messy way that happened when computers broke down. These gaps were clean, precise cuts, like someone had used digital scissors to carefully remove specific information. The door to her small office opened, and June Park walked in carrying 2 cups of fresh coffee. June was her research partner and one of the few people who could understand her work. He had been studying galactic communication networks for longer than anyone else at the Institute. "You look like you've seen a ghost," June said, setting 1 cup on her desk. "What's got you so focused this morning?" Hana turned her monitor toward him. "Look at this data corruption from the Andorian system. Does anything seem strange to you?" June pulled up a chair and studied the screen. His dark eyes moved back and forth as he read through the information. After a few minutes, he shrugged. "Looks like standard corruption to me. Probably a solar flare or an old computer system failing." "That's what I thought at first," Hana said. "But look at this." She opened 5 more files from different star systems. And this one too." June's expression slowly changed as he saw the same pattern repeated across multiple systems. The missing data wasn't random at all. In every case, the gaps appeared in the same types of files: historical records, technological archives, and cultural databases of advanced civilizations. "This is impossible," June said quietly. "These systems are hundreds of light years apart. There's no way the same type of damage could happen to all of them." Hana nodded. "Unless it wasn't damage at all." She opened her analysis program and ran a deeper scan on the corrupted files. The results made both of them stare at the screen in silence. Hidden beneath the surface corruption were traces of 3 different deletion methods. One looked like it came from an advanced artificial intelligence. Another appeared to be some kind of energy manipulation. The third seemed biological in nature. 3 different methods," Hana whispered. "But they're all doing the same thing." June stood up and began pacing around the small office. "Show me everything you found." For the next 2 hours, Hana walked him through her discovery. She had stumbled across evidence that someone, or something, was systematically removing information about advanced civilizations from the galactic network. Not all civilizations, but specifically those that had reached certain technological milestones. The pattern was always the same. A species would develop faster than light travel, establish colonies across multiple star systems, and begin sharing their knowledge through the galactic communication network. Then, suddenly, all records of their existence would vanish. Not just from their own systems, but from every database that had ever mentioned them. It's like they never existed, Hana said, pointing to a gap in the records where an entire civilization's history should have been. But we can still see the shadows they left behind, trade records that reference species with no names, charts showing colonies around planets that are now listed as uninhabited, scientific papers that cite research from sources that don't exist anymore. June sat back down, his face pale. How many civilizations are we talking about? Hana had been afraid he would ask that question. She pulled up her master analysis. At least 47 that I can identify so far. Probably more that were erased so completely I can't even find shadows of them. The silence in the room was heavy. 47 entire civilizations, gone without a trace. Billions, maybe trillions, of lives that had been wiped from the historical record as if they had never mattered at all. We need to report this, June said finally. Report what? Hana asked. That someone is deleting civilizations from history? Who would believe us? And even if they did, who could we possibly report it to? If whatever is doing this can erase entire species, what could Earth's government do about it? June didn't have an answer for that. They both knew that humanity was still relatively new to galactic civilization. Earth had only developed faster than light travel 30 years ago. Compared to the species that had been erased, humans were like children playing, with toys they didn't understand. Hana turned back to her computer and opened another file. There's something else. The erasures aren't random, they follow a timeline. Species that reach certain technological levels get erased within a few years of hitting those milestones. She showed him a chart she had created. Every erased civilization had followed the same basic development pattern. First, they achieved faster-than-light travel. Then they established interstellar colonies. Then they began developing advanced artificial intelligence or energy manipulation technologies. And then they vanished. It's like something is watching, Hana said quietly. Waiting for species to reach a certain point in their development and then erasing them. June studied the timeline carefully. What about the species that are still around? The ones that have survived longer than the erasure pattern suggests they should have? Hana had wondered about that, too. She pulled up information about the older surviving galactic civilizations. They're all different from the ones that got erased. Most of them developed very slowly and carefully. They avoided certain technologies entirely. It's like they learned to stay below a certain threshold. Or maybe they know something we don't, June suggested. That thought sent a chill down Hana's spine. If the surviving civilizations knew about the erasures, why hadn't they warned younger? Species like humanity? Were they afraid, or were they somehow involved? She opened one more file, this one containing Earth's own development timeline. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel and established colonies. They were now beginning to develop more advanced artificial intelligence. According to the pattern she had discovered, Earth should be next on the list for erasure. June, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, according to this timeline, humanity has maybe 2 years before we reach the danger zone. June looked at the screen and felt his stomach drop. 2 years. If Hana was right, they had 2 years to figure out how to protect Earth from whatever was hunting advanced civilizations. We can't report this through normal channels, he said. If word gets out, it could cause panic. But we can't ignore it either. Hana saved all her research to a secure drive and made several backup copies. We need to be very careful about who we tell, and we need to learn more about what's doing this. She pulled up star charts showing the locations where civilizations had been erased. The erasures had happened all across the galaxy with no clear geographic pattern. But when she looked at the timing, something interesting emerged. "Look at this," she said, highlighting dates on the timeline. Some of these erasures happened at exactly the same time, even though they were in completely different parts of the galaxy. "That's impossible, unless whatever is doing this can move faster than light, or there's more than one of them," June finished. Hana nodded grimly. Her analysis had suggested 3 different deletion methods, which could mean 3 different entities working together. Or worse, 3 different threats that humanity would have to face. As the afternoon sun broke through the clouds outside, Hana and June sat in her small office, surrounded by evidence of the greatest threat humanity had ever faced. Somewhere out there in the galaxy, something was hunting civilizations like theirs. Something that had already erased 47 entire species from existence, and according to the timeline, Earth was next. The rain had stopped, but the storm was just beginning. 3 weeks after Hana's discovery, a small research ship called the Taeguk drifted silently through space near the edge of the Kepler system. Captain Minho Lee stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the main viewing window. His crew had been traveling for 6 days to reach this remote location, following coordinates that Hana and June had given them. The Taeguk wasn't a military ship. It was designed for scientific research, with advanced sensors and computers, but very few weapons. Minho had volunteered for this mission because he believed in what Hana had discovered. Someone needed to investigate the erasures, and the government wasn't ready to send official military ships on what they considered a wild theory. "Captain," called Sola Choi from her engineering station, "I'm picking up some strange energy readings about 2 million kilometers ahead of us." Minho walked over to look at her screen. Sola was the best engineer he had ever worked with. If she said something was strange, it usually was. The energy readings on her display showed patterns that didn't match any known technology. "What kind of energy?" Minho asked. "I'm not sure," Sola replied, adjusting her instruments. "It's definitely artificial, but it doesn't match any engine signatures in our database. And it's big, Captain, really big." At the navigation station, Daeho Yoon was studying star charts and flight paths. He had been quiet during most of the journey, but now he looked worried. "Captain, according to these coordinates, we should be approaching the location of the Kepler colony. But my sensors aren't showing any signs of a colony at all. The Kepler colony had been established by a species called the Rilani about 50 years ago. According to galactic records, they had built a thriving settlement around the 4th planet. In this system, the colony should have been home to over 2 million Rilani citizens. "Yuna," Minho called to the communications officer, "try to contact the Kepler colony." Yuna Song had been monitoring communication channels since they arrived in the system. She shook her head. "I've been trying for the past hour, Captain. No response on any frequency. It's like nobody's home." Minho felt a cold feeling in his stomach. This was exactly what Hana had predicted they would find. A colony that should exist according to the records, but had somehow vanished without a trace. "Take us closer," he ordered Daeho. "But keep us at maximum sensor range. I don't want to get too close to whatever is causing those energy readings." The Taeguk moved slowly through space toward the 4th planet. As they got closer, their sensors began picking up more details. The planet was there, but it looked wrong. The surface should have been covered with cities and industrial complexes. Instead, it appeared completely empty. "Captain," Sola said, her voice tight with concern, "those energy readings are getting stronger, and I'm detecting something else." There's a massive ship about 500,000 kilometers from the planet. Minho ordered the main screen to display what their sensors were seeing. What appeared on the screen made everyone on the bridge go silent. The ship was enormous, at least 20 kilometers long and perfectly black. It didn't reflect any light from the system's star, making it look like a hole cut out of space itself. "I've never seen anything like that," Deho whispered. The black ship was clearly artificial, but its design was unlike anything in their databases. It had smooth, flowing lines that seemed to bend and shift when they looked at it too long. Strange symbols glowed dimly along its hull, pulsing in patterns that hurt to watch. "Yuna, are you getting any communications from that ship?" Minho asked. Yuna was working frantically at her station, trying different frequencies and communication protocols. "Nothing, Captain. But I am detecting some kind of data transmission. It's not directed at us, though. The ship seems to be sending information somewhere else. Can you intercept it?" "I can try, but the encryption is beyond anything I've seen before." "Wait." Yuna's eyes widened as she looked at her screen. "Captain, I'm getting fragments of the transmission. It's not in any language I recognize, but some of the data patterns look familiar." Minho moved to her station to look at the intercepted data. The patterns on her screen looked similar to the deletion signatures that Hana had found in the corrupted files back on Earth. "It's erasing something," Yuna said quietly. "The ship is systematically deleting all digital records of the Rilani colony. Every database, every file, every piece of information that proves they ever existed." As they watched, the black ship moved closer to the planet below. Arrays of devices extended from its hull, pointing down toward the empty world. Energy beams shot out from these devices, striking what remained of the Rilani cities. But the beams weren't destroying the buildings physically. Instead, they seemed to be deleting them from reality itself. Structures that had stood for decades simply faded away, leaving no trace that they had ever been built. "This is impossible," Sola breathed. "Nothing can delete physical objects like that." Minho watched in horror as an entire city vanished in seconds. The Rilani colony, home to millions of people, was being erased from existence as if it had never been built. "Captain," Deho said urgently, "the ship is changing course. It's heading toward us." The massive black vessel had detected their presence. It turned slowly in space, bringing its strange weapons to bear on the small research ship. Symbols along, its hull began glowing brighter, and the same energy that had erased the colony was now pointing directly at them. "Emergency jump!" Minho shouted. "Get us out of here now!" Deho's hands flew over his controls, preparing their faster-than-light drive for an emergency escape. But the black ship was faster. Beams of the same deletion energy shot out toward the Teguk. For a moment, everyone on the bridge thought they were about to be erased from existence. But instead of deleting them, the beams seemed to scan their ship. The energy passed through their hull harmlessly, but Minho could see their computers and data systems flickering. "It's trying to erase our records," Yuna realized. "The ship is deleting all the data we collected about this system." But human computer systems were different from the more advanced technologies used by older galactic civilizations. The deletion beams that worked perfectly on Rilani technology struggled with Earth's simpler, more chaotic computer designs. "Jump now," Minho ordered. The Teguk disappeared in a flash of light, escaping just as the black ship prepared to fire again. Hours later, they were safely in hyperspace, traveling back toward Earth. The crew gathered in the ship's small meeting room to discuss what they had seen. "We need to warn everyone," Sola said. "That thing destroyed an entire civilization. 2 million people gone without a trace. But Who would believe us? Daiho asked. We barely have any evidence. The ship erased most of our sensor data. Yuna held up a small data storage device. I managed to save fragments of the transmission I intercepted. It's not much, but it proves that something was systematically deleting information about the Relani. Minho studied the data fragments on his personal tablet. The deletion patterns were identical to what Hana had found in her research, but now they knew what was causing the erasures. Massive ships operated by some unknown intelligence. Hana called. Them the Silence Keepers, Minho said. Based on what we saw, I think that's a good name for them. They're keeping the galaxy silent by erasing civilizations that get too advanced. But why? Sola asked. What's the point of destroying entire species? Minho didn't have an answer for that. The black ship's actions seemed random and cruel, but he suspected there was a purpose behind them. The Silence Keepers weren't just destroying civilizations for fun. They were following some kind of plan. We need to get this information back to Earth, he said, and we need to find out more about these ships. If Hana is right, humanity only has a short time before they come for us too. Yuna was still working on decoding the transmission fragments she had saved. Captain, I'm finding references to other locations in this data. I think the Silence Keepers have ships positioned all across the galaxy. The thought sent chills through everyone in the room. How many of these massive ships were out there? How many civilizations had they already erased? And most importantly, how could humanity possibly defend against enemies that could delete entire planets from existence? As the Teguk traveled through hyperspace toward Earth, its crew carried with them the first direct evidence of the threat facing all advanced civilizations. The Silence Keepers were real, they were powerful, and they were actively hunting species that developed beyond a certain technological level. Somewhere behind them, in normal space, the black ship continued its work, methodically erasing every trace that the Relani had ever existed. 2 months after the Teguk's encounter with the Silence Keepers, another Earth ship approached a very different kind of mystery. The exploration vessel Hanbit drifted through the Veil Nebula, its hull illuminated by the strange purple and blue gases that filled this region of space. Junho Lim stood in the ship's observation deck, looking out at the massive structure ahead of them. It was a ring world, an artificial habitat built around a star. The ring was so large that entire planets could fit inside it, with millions of times more living space than any normal world could provide. But something was wrong with this ring world. Very wrong. The readings don't make sense, said Taemin Ko, the ship's xenobiologist. He was studying the scanner data with a confused expression on his face. According to our instruments, this structure is both ancient and brand new at the same time. Junho had led many exploration missions, but he had never seen anything like this. The ring world showed signs of being millions of years old, with wear, patterns, and cosmic radiation damage that only came from extreme age. But at the same time, parts of it looked like they had been built yesterday. Maybe the inhabitants have been doing repairs, suggested Hyeji Nam, the expedition's historian. She was comparing the ring world's design to similar structures in the galactic database. That's what I thought at first, Taemin replied. But look at this. He showed them a detailed scan of one section of the ring. This area shows millions of years of wear, but the section right next to it has zero wear. Not just recently repaired, but actually zero. Like it was just created this morning. The Hanbit moved closer to the ring world, using its advanced sensors to map the structure. What they found made no sense at all. The ring was covered in cities, but the cities existed in patches. Some areas were filled with massive, gleaming metropolises that looked brand new. Other areas contained ancient ruins that had clearly been abandoned for thousands of years, and between them were empty spaces where cities should have been, but weren't. "I'm detecting life signs," reported the ship's medical officer. "But they're scattered all over the ring in small groups. This structure should be able to support billions of people, but I'm only reading a few million." Junho made the decision to send a landing party to investigate. He chose a small team, himself, Taemin, Hyeji, and 2 security officers. They took a shuttle down to what looked like one of the newer cities on the ring's surface. The city was beautiful but empty. Gleaming towers reached up toward the artificial sky, connected by graceful bridges and floating platforms. Gardens filled, with alien plants lined the streets. Everything was clean and perfect, but there were no people anywhere. "Hello?" Junho called out as they walked through the silent streets. "Is anyone here?" Their voices echoed off the empty buildings. The city felt like it had been abandoned recently, but their instruments detected no signs that anyone had ever lived there at all. No wear on the walkways, no organic residue, no trace chemicals that living beings always left behind. "This is impossible," Hyeji said. "A city this size should show some signs of habitation, even if everyone left recently, but it's like nobody ever lived here at all." They continued exploring until they reached the edge of the new city. Beyond it was a sharp line where the gleaming buildings ended and ancient ruins began. The contrast was startling. On one side, perfect modern architecture. On the other side, crumbling stones covered in millions of years of dust. But the most disturbing thing was what lay between the two areas. There was a strip of empty space about 100 meters wide where nothing existed at all. Not ruins, not new buildings, just bare metal floor. It looked like something had been there once but had been completely removed. "Taemin, what do your biological scanners show in that empty area?" Junho asked. Taemin ran a detailed scan of the empty strip. "Nothing, Captain. No organic traces, no chemical residue, no signs that anything biological ever existed there. But that's impossible. Even if buildings were demolished perfectly, there should be some trace of the life that once existed inside them." Hyeji was, taking photographs and making notes. As the expedition's historian, she had studied the rise and fall of many civilizations, but she had never seen anything like this. "It's like history has been edited," she said quietly. "Someone went through this ring world and selectively removed certain periods of time." They walked along the border between the new city and the ancient ruins, trying to understand what had happened. The line was perfectly straight and clean, as if someone had used a cosmic eraser to remove a specific slice of the ring world's history. As they explored further, they found more evidence of this selective editing. Some buildings were half missing, with clean cuts through their structure. A tower might exist up to the 10th floor and then simply end, as if the upper floors had never been built. Streets would run normally for several blocks, then stop abruptly at invisible walls. "Captain," one of the security officers called out, "you need to see this." They followed him to a large plaza in the center of the city. In the middle of the plaza was a statue, but it was unlike any statue they had ever seen. The figure appeared to be changing, shifting between different forms as they watched. Sometimes it looked like a tall, graceful being with 4 arms and crystalline skin. Other times it looked completely different, like a small, furry creature with large eyes. The statue couldn't seem to decide what it wanted to be. "The statue is showing us the history that was edited out," Hyeji realized. "These are the people who used to live here before they were removed from the timeline." Taman was scanning the statue with every instrument he had. "Captain, this statue isn't just changing appearance. It's actually changing at the molecular level. The material itself is being rewritten constantly." As they watched, the statue shifted again, this time showing a group of beings that looked almost human, but with silver hair and completely black eyes. For a moment, the image was perfectly clear. Then it began to fade, as if something was trying to erase it. "We're seeing the editing process in real time," Junho said. "Something is still actively removing these people from history." A sound behind them made everyone turn around. Walking toward them across the plaza was a figure that seemed to be made of pure light. It had a roughly humanoid shape, but its body glowed with soft blue energy. As it approached, they could feel a strange pressure in their minds, like someone trying to read their thoughts. The being of light stopped about 10 meters away from them and began to speak, but not with words. Instead, concepts and images appeared, directly in their minds. The creature called itself an arbiter. It explained that it and others like it were responsible for maintaining the stability of galactic civilization. They watched over younger species and made corrections when necessary to prevent them from making mistakes that would harm themselves or others. "Corrections?" Junho asked aloud, though he knew the arbiter was reading his thoughts directly. More. Images flowed into their minds. The arbiter showed them visions of galactic wars, of species that had destroyed themselves with their own technology, of civilizations that had spread chaos and suffering across the stars. All of these disasters could have been prevented, the arbiter explained, if someone had intervened at the right moment. That was what the arbiters did. They judged civilizations and made corrections to prevent future disasters. Sometimes the corrections were small, like preventing the development of a dangerous technology. Sometimes they were larger, like removing entire periods of history that had led civilizations down destructive paths. "You're changing the past," Hyeji said, horror clear in her voice. The arbiter sent them images of what the ring world had been like before their intervention. The beings who had lived here had developed weapons that could destroy entire star systems. They had been preparing to wage war against their neighbors, potentially killing billions of innocent people, so the arbiters had made a correction. They had edited the timeline, removing the period of history when these beings had developed their dangerous weapons. The result was a peaceful civilization that posed no threat to anyone. "But you erased millions of people from existence," Junho protested. The arbiter's response was cold and logical. Those people had never existed in the corrected timeline. They had been potential threats to galactic stability. By preventing their existence, the arbiters had saved countless lives that would have been lost in the wars those people would have started. Taman was studying the arbiter with fascination and horror. "How many civilizations have you edited like this?" The answer came as a flood of images. Hundreds of worlds, thousands of species, all edited and corrected by the arbiters. Most of the changes were small and subtle. A scientist would fail to make a crucial discovery. A leader would make a different decision. A war would end differently, but sometimes the changes were massive. Entire civilizations would be retroactively prevented from existing if the arbiters judged them to be too dangerous. "What about humanity?" Hyeji asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. The arbiter paused, and they could sense something like confusion in its thoughts. Humanity was an anomaly. The arbiters had tried to make corrections to human history several times, but each time the changes had unexpected results. When they prevented one war, humans started a different war that was even worse. When they removed a dangerous technology, humans invented something even more dangerous to replace it. When they tried to guide human leaders toward peaceful decisions, those leaders made choices that led to even greater chaos. Humanity refused to follow the patterns that the arbiters understood. Every correction they made led to more problems, not fewer. Eventually, they had given up trying to edit human history, hoping that humanity would destroy itself before becoming a threat to the rest of the galaxy. But humans hadn't destroyed themselves. Instead, they had survived and grown stronger, developing in ways that the arbiters couldn't predict or control. "You're afraid of us," Junho realized. The arbiter didn't deny it. Humanity represented something the arbiters had never encountered before. A species that became more stable through chaos, not less. Their attempts to create order in human civilization had only made it more unpredictable. As the landing party prepared to leave the ring world, the arbiter gave them one final message. Humanity was being watched. If they became too much of a threat to galactic stability, the arbiters would find a way to correct them, no matter how difficult it might be. Back on their ship, the team sat in stunned silence as they processed what they had learned. The arbiters weren't just erasing civilizations like the Silence Keepers. They were editing reality itself, removing entire species from the timeline if they judged them to be dangerous. And humanity was next on their list. The research ship Mugungwa floated in the middle of what looked like a graveyard in space. Hundreds of massive ships drifted silently around them, their hulls dark and lifeless. But these weren't ordinary metal ships. They were organic, grown, rather than built, with smooth curves and surface patterns that looked like tree bark or coral. Sunho Bay stood on the bridge, studying the strange ships through the viewing window. He had been chosen to lead this mission because of his experience with dangerous situations. The reports from the previous expeditions had made it clear that whatever was erasing civilizations from the galaxy was extremely dangerous. "I've never seen ships like these," said Rena Kong, the mission's biologist. She was running scans on the nearest organic vessel, trying to understand what it was made of. "They're definitely alive, or at least they were alive once. But the size is impossible. This ship is over 50 kilometers long. No living creature could grow that large." Seok Kim, the team's engineer, was studying the energy readings from the organic ships. "They're not completely dead," he reported. "I'm detecting very low-level biological activity throughout the fleet. It's like they're sleeping." The Mugungwa had come to the terminus sector following reports of entire star systems going dark. Unlike the clean deletions caused by the Silence Keepers or the timeline edits made by the arbiters, these disappearances were different. Whole populations would vanish overnight, but their cities and technology would be left completely untouched. Captain called the communications officer. "I'm picking up a signal from one of the organic ships. It's very weak, but it's definitely directed at us." Sunho felt his stomach tighten. After what the previous missions had encountered, any contact with the entities erasing civilizations was dangerous. But they had come here to learn about the threat, and this might be their only chance. "Put it through," he ordered. The signal wasn't audio or video. Instead, it was a complex pattern of chemical information that somehow translated directly into thoughts and feelings. The crew suddenly understood that they were being invited aboard one of the organic ships. Not commanded or demanded, but politely invited, like guests being welcomed into someone's home. "This feels like a trap," Seok said quietly. "Maybe," Sunho replied. "But we need to know what we're dealing with. I'll take a small team aboard. Rena, Seok, you're with me. Everyone else stays here and monitors our situation." They took a shuttle to the nearest organic ship, which was shaped like an enormous flower with petals that slowly opened to reveal a docking bay inside. The docking bay was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls pulsed gently with a soft, green light, and the air smelled like a garden after rain. As soon as they stepped out of their shuttle, they could feel that they were inside a living creature. The floor beneath their feet was warm and slightly soft, like walking on thick moss. Tendrils of organic material hung from the ceiling, swaying gently in air currents they couldn't feel. "The atmosphere is safe to breathe," Rena reported, checking her instruments. "In fact, it's cleaner than the air on most planets. This ship is actually filtering and purifying everything around us." They followed a corridor that seemed to grow wider as they walked through it. The walls were covered in patterns that looked like neural networks or the root systems of plants. As they moved deeper into the ship, they began to see alcoves along the walls that contained what looked like sleeping figures. But the figures weren't all the same species. Sunho could see beings that looked like giant insects, others that resembled walking plants, and some that appeared to be made of living crystal. All of them were motionless, surrounded by organic pods that pulsed with soft light. "They're alive," Rena whispered, scanning one of the sleeping figures. "All of them. Their biological functions are extremely slow, but they're definitely alive." "How many?" Siak asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Rena expanded her scan to cover more of the ship. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands on this ship alone. And there are hundreds of ships in this graveyard." The corridor led them to a large chamber at the heart of the organic ship. The chamber was filled with what looked like a garden, but the plants were unlike anything found on Earth or any other world they knew. These plants seemed to glow with their own internal light, and their leaves and flowers moved independently, as if they were watching the human visitors. In the center of the garden stood a figure that was clearly waiting for them. It was humanoid, in shape, but made entirely of plant material. Its skin looked like bark, its hair was made of flowing vines, and its eyes were like deep pools of green water. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind through leaves. "Welcome, young gardeners," the plant being said. "We are the cultivators. We have been expecting you." Sanho tried to keep his voice steady. "You're the ones who have been making civilizations disappear?" The cultivator tilted its head, considering the question. "Disappear is not the correct word. We preserve them. We save them from the suffering and chaos that comes with uncontrolled growth." It gestured toward the sleeping figures in the alcoves they had passed. These beings were once members of civilizations that had reached the dangerous stage of development. They were creating weapons, polluting their worlds, fighting wars that would have destroyed them completely. "We saved them." "Saved them how?" Rena asked, though she was beginning to understand. "We absorbed them into our collective consciousness," the cultivator explained. "Their individual minds still exist, but they are now part of something greater. They experience perfect peace, eternal happiness, and complete freedom from the pain and fear that plagued their separate existences." Siak looked around at the sleeping figures with horror. "You turned them into plants." "We gave them immortality," the cultivator corrected. "In our collective, they will never die, never suffer, never make the mistakes that would have led to their destruction. They are part of the garden now, and the garden is eternal." The plant being led them deeper into the chamber, showing them more sections of the organic ship. Each area contained thousands of sleeping beings from different species, all absorbed into the cultivator collective. Some had been there for centuries, others for millennia. "We have been gardening the galaxy for millions of years," the cultivator continued. "We watch young civilizations grow and develop. When they reach the stage where they might harm themselves or others, we harvest them. It is an act of love, not destruction." Sunho felt sick. "You're kidnapping entire civilizations." "We are preventing galactic catastrophe," the cultivator replied calmly. "Left to their own development, most species eventually destroy themselves or become threats to other forms of life. We have seen it happen countless times. War, pollution, genetic manipulation, artificial intelligence that turns against its creators. The pattern is always the same." Rena was studying the organic systems around them. "How do you choose which civilizations to harvest?" "We evaluate their growth patterns," the cultivator explained. "Species that develop too quickly, that create dangerous technologies without wisdom, that show signs of becoming aggressive toward other forms of life. These are the ones that need our intervention." Images began flowing through their minds, showing them the history of civilizations the cultivators had harvested. They saw species that had created planet-killing weapons, others that had poisoned their own worlds, and some that had begun experimenting with technologies that could have torn holes in reality itself. "But you don't give them a choice," Siok protested. "Children do not choose to be protected from fire," the cultivator replied. "Civilizations in the dangerous stage of development cannot be trusted to make wise decisions about their own future. We make those decisions for them." The plant beings showed them more areas of the ship, each containing different types of preserved consciousness. Some were individual minds that had been absorbed completely. Others were entire cultures that had been harvested together, maintaining their social structures within the collective dream. "What about humanity?" Sunho asked, dreading the answer. The cultivator paused, and they could sense something like confusion in its plant-like thoughts. "Humanity is problematic. We have been watching your species for decades, waiting for the right moment to harvest you. But every time we prepare to act, you do something unexpected." Images flowed through their minds, showing human history from the cultivator perspective. They saw humanity developing dangerous technologies, starting wars, and polluting their planet. By all the normal patterns, humans should have been harvested long ago. "But you also do things that do not fit the pattern," the cultivator continued. "You create beauty alongside destruction. You show compassion for other species even while fighting among yourselves. You solve problems in ways we cannot predict. It is very disturbing." Rena realized something important. "You're afraid to harvest us because you don't understand us." "We are not afraid," the cultivator said, but its voice carried uncertainty. "We are cautious. Humanity represents a form of chaos that we have never encountered before. Most species follow predictable development patterns. You do not." The cultivator led them to a viewing area where they could see the entire ship graveyard spread out around them. "We have been debating what to do about humanity for many years. Some of us believe you should be harvested immediately before you become too dangerous. Others think you might represent a new form of evolution that should be studied." "And what do you think?" Sunho asked. "I think," the cultivator said slowly, "that humanity might be the first species we encounter that could actually benefit from remaining free. Your chaos might be a form of stability that we do not understand." As they prepared to leave the organic ship, the cultivator gave them a final message. We will continue to watch humanity. If you prove that chaos can coexist with wisdom, we may choose not to harvest you. But if you follow the same destructive path as other species, we will save you from yourselves, whether you wish it or not. Back. On the Mugunghwa, the team sat in stunned silence. They had encountered the third type of entity that was erasing civilizations from the galaxy. Unlike the Silence Keepers who deleted information or the Arbiters who edited timelines, the cultivators absorbed entire species into a collective consciousness. And like the others, they saw humanity as a threat that might need to be eliminated. But they also saw something in humans that made them hesitate. Something chaotic and unpredictable that didn't fit their understanding of how civilizations were supposed to develop. The question now was whether humanity's unpredictability would save them or doom them. 6 months after the discovery of the cultivators, Earth was in chaos. Not the destructive kind of chaos that the 3 eraser entities expected, but the productive kind of chaos that only humans seemed capable of creating. In a secret command, center beneath Seoul, Mina Seo stood in front of a massive wall display showing the locations of resistance cells across the galaxy. As the coordinator of humanity's response to the erasure threat, she had been working 18-hour days to organize what everyone was calling the Stubborn Network. The name had started as a joke. When other species learned about the 3 entities that were systematically erasing advanced civilizations, most of them tried to hide or slow down their technological development. Humans typically had decided to do the exact opposite. Status report, Mina called to her team of coordinators. Kyung-oh looked up from his communication station. We now have active resistance cells in 47 star systems. The Centauri group just figured out how to jam Silence Keeper deletion beams using modified microwave ovens. The Vega cell is testing a temporal anchor that might protect against Arbiter timeline edits, and the Procyon team thinks they've found a way to block cultivator absorption using loud music and aggressive thoughts. Mina shook her head in amazement. Leave it to humans to turn kitchen appliances and rock concerts into weapons against cosmic threats. The solutions her people were coming up with made no logical sense, but somehow they worked. What about the other species? She asked. That's where it gets interesting, Kyung replied, pulling up reports from across the galaxy. We're getting requests for help from civilizations that we thought were hiding from the erasers. Turns out some of them have been fighting back for centuries, but their methods weren't working. Our chaotic approach is giving them new ideas. The first breakthrough had come from a human colony in the Tau Ceti system. When a Silence Keeper ship had arrived to delete their records, the colonists had done something that no other species had ever tried. Instead of trying to protect their data with advanced encryption or sophisticated firewalls, they had backed everything up onto thousands of cheap, primitive computers and scattered them across dozens of planets. The Silence Keeper deletion beams were designed to target advanced data storage systems. They couldn't efficiently process the huge number of simple, redundant backups that the humans had created. By the time the alien ship had finished deleting a few thousand computers, the humans had already created 10,000 more. Frustrated, the Silence Keeper had eventually given up and moved on to find easier targets. Sir, called Do-Ha Yim from her analysis station, I'm getting reports that other species are starting to copy our backup methods. The Andromedans just distributed their cultural archives across 2 million personal communication devices. The Centauri colonies are hiding their scientific data in children's video games. Mina smiled. The galaxy's older civilizations had spent centuries trying to protect themselves with logic and advanced technology. Humans had accidentally discovered that the best defense was to be too chaotic and redundant for the erasers to handle efficiently, but the real breakthrough had come when they encountered the Arbiters. a human research station in the Kepler system, had been targeted for timeline editing when the Arbiters decided that humanity's development of quantum computers posed a threat to galactic stability. The energy beings had tried to retroactively prevent the invention, but they had run into a problem. Human innovation didn't follow logical patterns. The Arbiters could prevent one scientist from inventing quantum computers, but three other completely unrelated humans would independently develop the same technology using totally different approaches. When they prevented those inventions, 5 more humans would create quantum computers by accident while trying to build something else entirely. The Arbiters had spent weeks trying to edit human history, but every change they made created new, unexpected developments that were even more chaotic than what they had tried to prevent. "The Andromedans are reporting something interesting," Kyung said, reading a new message. "They tried copying our accidental innovation approach. Their scientists are now developing technology by deliberately making random mistakes. They've accidentally created 3 new forms of faster-than-light travel in the past month." Mina laughed. Humanity's tendency to stumble into major discoveries while trying to solve completely different problems was apparently contagious. The resistance against the cultivators had been even more unexpected. A human mining colony in the Outer Rim had been targeted for absorption into the collective consciousness. The cultivators had surrounded the colony with their organic ships and begun the harvesting process. But something had gone wrong. Human minds, it turned out, were too chaotic to be properly absorbed. Instead of joining the peaceful collective dream, the human consciousness had turned the shared mental space into something resembling a never-ending party mixed with a heated political debate. The absorbed humans had started arguing with the other species in the collective, organizing them into discussion groups, and somehow convincing them that being absorbed wasn't actually as great as they had thought. Within hours, the collective consciousness had become so noisy and disorganized that the cultivators had been forced to release everyone just to restore peace. "We're getting more reports of successful resistance," Doha reported. "The vegan colonies used our argument technique to disrupt a cultivator harvesting. The Rigel system played human music so loudly that it gave the organic ships headaches. And the Altair group convinced a cultivator collective to release 3 other species by challenging them to a debate about the ethics of forced absorption." The pattern was becoming clear across the galaxy. Humanity's chaotic, illogical approach to problems was creating safe zones where other species could develop without triggering the erasure protocols. But it wasn't just about defense. Human colonies were also accidentally solving problems that had puzzled other civilizations for centuries. "The Proxima Research Station just sent an interesting report," Kyung said. "They were trying to figure out how to communicate with a silicon-based life form. Standard first contact protocols weren't working, so they tried every random method they could think of. Turns out, the silicon beings communicate through interpretive dance performed with mining equipment." Mina shook her head. "Of course they did, and the Barnard Star colony has made contact with an energy-based civilization by using modified guitar amplifiers to modulate subspace frequencies. The energy beings think human music is the most sophisticated form of mathematics they've ever encountered." The success of the human approach was spreading throughout the galaxy. Species that had been hiding from the erasers for centuries were starting to emerge from their shells, adopting human-style chaos as a survival strategy. But the most important development was something that none of them had expected. The 3 eraser entities were starting to change their behavior. "Ma'am," Doha said, her voice excited, "I'm getting reports that a Silence Keeper ship in the Cygnus sector just helped a primitive civilization repair their communication network instead of deleting it. And an arbiter in the Perseus arm apparently prevented a war by introducing the combatants to human-style random negotiation techniques. Mina felt a surge of hope. What about the cultivators? Even better, a cultivator ship near Orion just convinced a species to slow down their dangerous weapons development by offering to teach them human-style productive chaos instead of absorbing them into the collective. The erasers, designed to counter logical, predictable civilizations, were learning from humanity's example. Instead of simply eliminating threats, they were starting to find creative solutions to the problems that had made them erase civilizations in the first place. There's something else, Kyung added. We're getting reports that some of the older surviving civilizations are coming out of hiding. Species that have been carefully avoiding the erasure triggers for millennia are starting to share their advanced technology again. They're saying that the galaxy feels safer now that the erasers are changing their methods. Mina looked at the display showing the expanding network of resistance cells and newly active civilizations. What had started as humanity's desperate attempt to survive had accidentally created something much larger. They had broken the cycle of fear that had dominated galactic civilization for millions of years. Status on our own development? She asked. We've passed every milestone that should have triggered erasure, Doha reported. Advanced AI, planet-scale engineering, quantum manipulation, even some technologies that we haven't seen before in any civilization. But none of the erasers are targeting us anymore. In fact, they seem to be protecting us from other threats. A communication alert sounded, and Kyung checked his incoming messages. Ma'am, we're getting a joint transmission from all three eraser types. They want to talk. Mina felt her heart skip a beat. After months of resistance and accidental diplomacy, the three entities that had been systematically erasing advanced civilizations wanted to negotiate. Set up the communication link, she ordered, but use the standard human protocol. Kyung looked confused. Which protocol is that? Mina grinned. Wing it and hope for the best. As the communication link activated, Mina realized that humanity had accidentally done something that no other species in galactic history had managed. They had convinced the galaxy's greatest threats to change their fundamental approach to the problem of dangerous civilizations. Not through superior technology or brilliant strategy, but through sheer stubborn chaos that refused to follow any predictable pattern. The pattern was finally broken. The ancient machine world at the center of the galaxy had been hidden for millions of years. Its surface was covered with structures so old that they seemed to be part of the planet itself. Metal towers reached up through the atmosphere, connected by bridges that spanned entire continents. This was the home of the predecessors, the civilization that had created the three eraser entities. Hana Kim stood on the bridge of the diplomatic ship Eguk, watching the massive world grow larger on their screens. After months of negotiations, the Silence Keepers, Arbiters, and Cultivators had agreed to bring human representatives to this sacred place. They wanted to show humanity the truth about why the erasures had begun. I never imagined anything like this could exist, said June Park, who stood beside her. He had been her research partner from the beginning when they first discovered the deletion patterns in the galactic database. Now they were about to meet the beings responsible for creating those patterns. The ship's captain announced that they were approaching the landing coordinates. Through the viewing windows, they could see representatives from dozens of species gathering on the planet's surface. This wasn't just a human diplomatic mission anymore. Word had spread throughout the galaxy that the erasure entities were finally willing to explain their actions. Captain Minho Lee, who had commanded the first expedition to encounter the Silence Keepers, was serving as the mission's military advisor. I still can't believe we're walking into the heart of the system that's been trying to erase us, he said. They're not trying to erase us anymore, Hana reminded him. That's why we're here. The landing party included representatives from Earth's government, several human colonies, and allied alien species that had joined the resistance network. As they stepped off their ship onto the ancient world's surface, they were greeted by figures that seemed to shimmer between different forms. The predecessors were not what anyone had expected. They appeared to be beings of pure energy, similar to the Arbiters but far more ancient and complex. Their forms shifted constantly, sometimes looking almost human, other times resembling the various alien species they had observed over the millions of years of their existence. "Welcome," said the lead predecessor, its voice somehow speaking directly into their minds in whatever language each listener understood best. "We have been waiting a very long time for a species like yours to arrive." The predecessors led the diplomatic party through the ancient city, showing them monuments and buildings that were older than most star systems. As they walked, the energy beings began to tell their story. "We were once a physical species, much like yourselves," the predecessor explained. "We had bodies, we lived on worlds, we built civilizations. But we made a terrible mistake." Images began flowing into the minds of the diplomatic party, showing the history of the predecessors. They had been incredibly advanced with technology that could reshape matter at the molecular level and manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. They had spread across the galaxy, creating a vast empire that lasted for millions of years. But their success had led to arrogance. They had begun experimenting with technologies that were too dangerous, manipulating the basic structure of reality itself. Other species had warned them to be more careful, but the predecessors had ignored those warnings. "We believed we were wise enough to control any technology we created," the predecessor continued. "We were wrong." The images showed the catastrophe that had nearly destroyed the galaxy. The predecessors' experiments with reality manipulation had created a chain reaction that began tearing apart the fabric of space and time itself. Stars began dying, planets disappeared, and entire regions of the galaxy became uninhabitable. "We managed to stop the destruction, but only by sacrificing our physical forms," the predecessor explained. "We became beings of pure energy so that we could work directly with the fundamental forces that we had damaged. The cleanup had taken millions of years. The predecessors had to carefully repair the damage they had caused, restoring stability to the galaxy piece by piece. But the experience had taught them a terrible lesson about the dangers of uncontrolled technological development. We realized that other species would eventually make the same mistakes we had made," the predecessor said. "So we created safeguards to prevent another catastrophe." The diplomatic party was led to a massive structure at the center of the ancient city. Inside, they found 3 enormous machines, each one designed with completely different technology, but programmed with the same basic mission. "The Silence Keepers," the predecessor explained, gesturing to the first machine. "Designed to prevent dangerous knowledge from spreading by deleting information about advanced technologies." The machine was a marvel of artificial intelligence technology, with quantum processing cores that could analyze and delete data across vast distances. It had been programmed to identify civilizations that were developing dangerous technologies and remove all records of those developments from the galactic database. "The Arbiters," the predecessor continued, indicating the second machine, "designed to prevent dangerous developments by editing the timeline itself. This machine was built from exotic matter that existed partially outside of normal space-time. It could reach back into the past and make subtle changes that would prevent civilizations from developing technologies that might threaten galactic stability. And the cultivators, the predecessor said, showing them the third machine, designed to preserve civilizations by absorbing them into a collective consciousness before they could harm themselves or others. The third machine was a fusion of organic and technological components, capable of creating the living ships that house the collective consciousness of absorbed species. 3 different approaches, Hana said, finally understanding. Same result, different software. Exactly, the predecessor confirmed. We built redundant systems because we knew that any single approach might fail. We programmed them to work independently, using different methods to achieve the same goal, preventing another galactic catastrophe. June was studying the machines with fascination. But they all had the same flaw. They were designed to counter logical, predictable civilizations. Yes, the predecessor admitted. We programmed them based on our own experience and the behavior of other species we had observed. We never anticipated a species that would become more stable through chaos rather than order. The lead predecessor gestured toward the human representatives. Your species has shown us something we never considered. Controlled chaos can be more stable than rigid order. Unpredictability can be a strength rather than a weakness. Mina Seo, who had coordinated the resistance network, stepped forward. So you're shutting down the eraser systems? Not shutting down, the predecessor corrected. Updating them. We are modifying their programming to work with species like yours rather than against them. The predecessors led them back to the 3 machines and began demonstrating the changes they were making. The Silence Keepers would now share dangerous knowledge selectively, teaching species how to use advanced technologies safely rather than simply deleting the information. The Arbiters would guide civilizations toward better decisions rather than editing their timelines. The Cultivators would offer collective consciousness as an option rather than forcing it on unwilling species. But the most important change, the predecessor continued, is that all 3 systems will now work together, with chaotic species like humanity, to find creative solutions to problems rather than simply eliminating the sources of those problems. Captain Minho Lee asked the question that everyone was thinking. Why didn't you just talk to civilizations directly instead of creating these automated systems? The predecessor's form shifted, showing something that might have been sadness. Because we were afraid. Our catastrophe had shown us how easily advanced civilizations could destroy themselves and others. We believed that direct intervention would be too risky, that we might accidentally cause the very disasters we were trying to prevent. So you built machines to do the work for you, Hana said. Yes, but machines, no matter how sophisticated, can only follow their programming. They cannot adapt to truly unexpected situations the way living beings can. The predecessor showed them images of how the galaxy had developed under the influence of the 3 eraser systems. Many civilizations had been lost, but many others had been saved from self-destruction. The systems had worked, but at a terrible cost in diversity and innovation. Humanity has shown us a better way, the predecessor said. Your chaotic approach creates solutions that none of us could have anticipated. You have turned our greatest weakness, our fear of the unpredictable, into a strength. As the diplomatic meeting continued, the predecessors explained their new vision for galactic civilization. Instead of preventing dangerous developments, they would help species learn to manage them safely. Instead of erasing threats, they would Transform them into opportunities for growth. We are offering humanity a role as mediators, the predecessor announced. Your species has proven capable of finding solutions that work for both chaotic and orderly civilizations. We would like you to help us guide the galaxy toward a more balanced approach to technological development. The human representatives looked at each other. They had come here expecting to negotiate for humanity's survival. Instead, they were being offered a position as partners in managing galactic civilization. There is one more thing, the predecessor said. We want to show you something that we have never shown to any other species. They were led to a hidden chamber deep within the ancient city. Inside, they found beings that looked almost like the predecessors, but somehow more solid, more real. We did not all sacrifice our physical forms, the predecessor explained. Some of us remained in this state, watching and waiting for a species that could help us find a better solution to the problem of dangerous technological development. The physical predecessors stepped forward, and for the first time in millions of years, they spoke directly to representatives of another species. We have been waiting for someone chaotic enough to break our own safeguards and create something better, they said. We believe that humanity, working together with the civilizations you have inspired, can build a galaxy where advanced technology and wisdom can coexist. As the diplomatic mission prepared to return to Earth with news of the agreement, Hana looked back at the ancient world one last time. Humanity had accidentally stumbled into the role of galactic peacemakers, not through superior technology or brilliant strategy, but through their stubborn refusal to follow predictable patterns. The three eraser systems would continue to operate, but now they would work as teachers and guides rather than judges and executioners. And humanity, the chaotic species that had broken the cycle of fear, would help ensure that the galaxy's future would be built on cooperation rather than erasure. Same result, different software indeed, but now the software had been updated with the most important feature of all, the ability to adapt and grow.